I bring a blank piece of paper and I write out for people how it works, okay? So, and just a reminder, the full script of everything I do is inside your manual somewhere, so I will attempt. So I know you're not all gonna be able to see, so this side of the room might wanna move over there, because I'm gonna have my back to you, okay? So we talked yesterday. We talked yesterday a little bit about kitchen table talk, and I want them to sit on my right-hand side. I'm right-handed. I want them to easily be able to read what I'm writing down. So after we do our tour of the house and we make compliments and build rapport, I say, well, let's sit down at the kitchen table, and I'm gonna show you how this works. So what I do is I take over people's payments. What that means is I'm taking over mortgage, taxes, insurance. If condo fees are applicable, I'll write in condo fees. And all the maintenance on the house for a period of time until I cash you out. Does that make sense? You have to talk slowly with people. This is a new concept, so you want to make sure they understand. And while you're writing this stuff down, you just want to confirm, besides your first mortgage, what other mortgages or lines of credit do you have? Because sometimes people don't tell you all the info on the phone because they never met you before. So we want to make sure we write out these 4 things. Then I'll confirm with them, what those numbers are. So I'll write the numbers here. So let's say it's $270, and I just do approximates. Their taxes might be $250 a month, and maybe their insurance is $100 a month. Condo fees in this case is nil, right? So I can see, okay, on that mortgage payment, let's say it's just $1,500, principal and interest. So I get a fair idea of what the costs are on the house, so I just add it up in front of them and I confirm, right? So your costs on this house are $1,850. Does that sound about right? Yes, okay, perfect. So I'm gonna take over all of these payments. Does that make sense? Yes, okay. So then they always wanna know, well, how much are you gonna pay me? Because if you're a person that buys houses, you must buy at a deep discount, right? And taking advantage of people is what people have in their mind. And I said, well, no, actually, if we run the numbers, you will see that what I'm offering to pay, which I haven't told them yet, but what I'm offering to pay is actually quite reasonable, and people find it quite reasonable. So if I figure we're a long distance apart on what I think it's worth and what they think it's worth, I don't want to insult them. So I just say, let me give you an example. Let's say your house is worth $300,000. And this is just my example I give to everyone. Now, if you put this on the open market on the MLS, in this current flat market, you might be lucky to get an offer at $280. Would you agree? Yes, you want them to buy in and know that they're understanding. Okay, so if you got an offer for $280, you probably seriously consider that offer, right? Oh yes, I could consider that offer. Okay, now if you had a realtor in play, you'd be paying about $15,000 in realtor fees. That sounds about right? Oh yeah, okay. That sounds about right. Okay, so now we're down to $265, right? So if you sold this house today with a realtor and you had no mortgage on this property, you'd be walking away with $265 minus your realtor, or minus your legal fees, might be $1,500. Does that make sense? Oh yeah, that makes sense, okay. Now that I've been in your property, would you not agree, it requires a little bit of touch-ups here and there, maybe you need a new bathroom, and I would just make, honest comments about their house, right? Like, needs a new paint job, and they might even say, oh yeah, I know it needs a new paint job. And I'd say to people, well, I don't actually paint the house myself, so I have to pay somebody to paint it. So it's gonna cost me about $5,000 in painting or renos, whatever you wanna put, depending on what their house is like. And it's okay to be honest, right? If they need a new roof, that might be your $5,000. If it needs a bathroom, that could be your $5,000. Okay, so we're down to $260, because I'm gonna have to put $5,000 into this house. Now, here's where what the mortgage amount comes into play. Let's say your first mortgage is around that $260 mark. Now that we've done the math with people and they see that they owe what it's worth, would it be reasonable for me to take over your payments considering that you owe pretty much what it's worth? You understand that? Oh yeah. Okay, so if we can agree that you owe what it's worth and I offer to take over all those payments for you, would you be interested? Yes. Okay, perfect. If they say yes, I say, okay, how soon do you need to move? And we would like to start, marketing things, so then you write up the paperwork. And then if they say, well, I need some money for a security deposit or to move, I'll offer them $1,000. So if I give you $1,000 and I take over all your payments, do we have a deal? Yes or no? They say, well, I think my house, people don't usually question this stuff up here, but they say, but you're not a realtor, and I'm not paying you a realtor fees. And I said, well, yeah, I understand that. I understand that you're not paying a realtor in this deal, but if I don't buy your house, you're gonna put it on the MLS eventually, right? Well, yes, okay, so, you just try to be reasonable. Would I pay maybe $5,000 for this deal? Okay, sure. I probably would pay $5,000 for this deal. So when they have little or no equity, I'm not gonna pay more than $5,000, but I'm gonna try and get it for $1,000. And if this is a landlord situation, I'll probably get it for nothing, especially if there's work to be done. So let's say in this same example, now, instead of the mortgage being $260,000, let's say it's $200,000 is their first mortgage, okay? So now, in their mind, they have $60,000 of equity, right? So the conversation becomes, how much do you need now and how much can you wait for? Because the more I have to give you now, the less purchase price I'm willing to pay. Because any money I give you is coming from somebody else at double-digit interest rates. So then I asked them, okay, how much do you need? Well, I need all of it. Well, I can't give you all of it. What are you using the money for? Oh, well, I'm moving cross country. Well, how much is that gonna cost you? Well, probably $10,000. And I'd like to pay off a credit card. Well, how much is your credit card? So you just start adding up what's the minimum amount they'll take. So let's say it's $15,000. Okay, so if I'm gonna give you $15,000 and your first mortgage is at $200,000, now my purchase price is going down. Okay, so if we can agree on a purchase price of $250,000, I'll give you $15,000 deposit. Are you okay with that? So if they agree, then I just got another $10,000 discount, which is great. So if people are real sticklers and they want, the money's really important to them, oftentimes we'll get away with zero down because they want that $60,000. If you ever get somebody that asks you, well, how much interest are you gonna pay me on my equity? It's very rare. And they say, well, how much is the bank paying you in your bank account? 0, 1%, it's not even worth the paperwork, right? So people seem to get that. So I'm gonna turn over the page and give you a third example. So remember, we backed the math down to 260, right? Initially, and let's say they only owe $100,000 on it. And this is a good scenario because oftentimes people can be buying another house. They're not selling because they have to sell, it's because they want a bigger place. So I'd say to them, well, how much money do you need for your down payment? Oh, I need $50,000. Okay, so what I'm gonna ask you to do is go to the bank, so that this is your first mortgage. I'm gonna ask you to put a line of credit on for $50,000, which they should easily be able to do, right now? Sean, easy, yeah, okay, as long as they're decent people. You can take that $50,000 line of credit, capped, so they're not taking any more. You can go use that for your down payment, and I'll make the payments on that. And I write this out for people, I'm not just writing it out for you, I write this out for them. Because when you're gone, I take a picture of the notes I've given them, so I remember what I agreed to, and then they remember too. So I will make these payments, okay? So maybe your first mortgage payment might have been still the $1,500, your line of credit's maybe 100, I don't know, what's a line of credit on 50,000?
It's interest only, so.
$100 is good enough? Okay, so maybe it adds an extra $100 to my bottom line. Who cares, I'm putting no money in. Let them access their own property, get that $50,000 out, and I'm gonna take over. So I've given you different scenarios of how this can work. And so when people say to me, but you're not putting in any money, I'm taking my own equity, say, yes, well, that's what my offer is if you have another offer for, a traditional sale, feel free to take it. But when things are slow, you can think about my offer and get back to me, right? So you don't want it to make it seem like you're desperate for a deal. You have to be willing to walk away. That's part of negotiation. You have to be saying, well, is that the best you can do? All those types of, word tracking. So I just show people in a very logical manner. They think this $300,000 house that we now talked down to $260,000, that's a $40,000 spread right there, right? It's just more than 10%. So this is a bread and butter deal. These are easy to find, well, relatively easy to find. But that's the math that I do. And you can't do math over the phone with people. They just don't get it. So you have to do your kitchen table talk, make sure they understand. You can negotiate on the spot and just confirm if this is what you're willing to do, are you ready to sign the paperwork now? And if they come up with some excuse, like I need to, talk to my husband, my wife, that's fine. Get back to me, but, feel free to leave it there, right? So, any questions on my, yes?
I got it. Paul?
So my understanding is the front page, you've kind of come in with an arbitrary number of, the 300,000.
That's my stock example.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how do you relate that to what the market price is and what they're asking?
Great question. So let's say in the $300,000 example that I gave them, that's not actually what their value is. Okay, so
Well, she's flipping, I'll say, I do it that way at 300 to say to people, this is easy math, right? The math is easy at 300. Yours will be, and it's whichever way you choose, yours will be more, or yours will be a little less. Usually you want to make it more in my head.
yeah, exactly. So I'm not going to use a $300,000 example on a $200,000 property, but you just make up the math as you go along. So if we're doing a $200,000 property, maybe instead of doing $20,000 less of an offer, I might do 185, which is 15, right? So that could be reasonable, okay? And then the realtor fees might be on 200,000, they might be 10,000. I'm just doing rough math, and I tell people rough math. Okay, now I'm down to 175, right? Bathroom in a $300,000 house or a $200,000 house still costs $5,000, or a painting or whatever, right? So I'm still backing down the numbers. Now I'm down to 170. So that's a $30,000 spread. That's just more than 10%. So I kind of have that 10% number in my mind. I want to do a little better. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. But people sometimes in their mind they think their property's worth more. So if I was to go in and offer that person 170, you just lowball them without explaining why you get down to 170. So you have to explain why you get down to 170, so it doesn't seem like a lowball. But if you just came in at 170, they're like, screw you.
So you have a pretty good idea what the market value for that house is before you even.
Do you have a pretty good idea of what that market value of that house might be before you even go to the house?
So, great question. When we talked about doing the lead sheet and then reviewing comps before you go over, I'll have kind of a price range in mind, depending on how nice or not nice it is inside. So it's good to know what the marketplace is that you're in. I mean, for example, Edmonton's a big city, so maybe you focus on a few neighborhoods in the northeast, and that you become an expert in that area. Red Deer's 100,000 people. It's pretty easy for me to know within, $20,000 what a house is worth. Same for Neil, he's in a smaller market in Airdrie. We know our numbers very quickly. Yeah. Good question though. More questions? We
Sean?
got Sean over here.
How do you work the mortgage penalty into your conversation there?
Great question. So once I know what their interest rate is and how much longer they have on their term, let's say it's something like their first mortgage is at 6%, which is pretty high in this market, right? So what I do is I have a blank area for additional terms on my my financing schedule. So I just kind of do this on the fly, but if it's something higher, then I'll say, well, we're gonna have to split the cost of those mortgage payout penalties. But if they don't have any equity, it's kind of hard to ask them to pay something that they don't have money to do. So it may make a difference on your deal, or you may know that when it comes to renewal time, you're just gonna take that agreement for sale right up to renewal time, so to minimize that penalty.
Yes, maybe I'll rephrase my question. If you know they have 2 or 3 years left on their mortgage penalties, fixed rate, big bank.
Yep.
It's gonna be many thousands of dollars.
Yes,
Can you justify the fact that you're offering them this money, because they're also saving those thousands of dollars that,
right,
that's what a price is.
Okay,
there.
so
the
now-
bottom line number is not
that's
the
right. So
real
it,
fee, so you have to go back.
an additional discount, yes.
Yeah.
So that's a great question and a great observation and a point. So yes, if you know they have a large payout penalty, then you're gonna wanna work that to reduce your number further. Thank you for pointing that out.
I was just gonna jump in there real quick for everyone in this room. If you know that the person is with one of the big 5 banks or the big 6 big chartered banks, and they have more than 2 or 3 years left, a good way for us in the room to ballpark what that's going to be is just multiply by 4%. So if they owe $300,000, $12,000 is gonna be very, very close to what that bank is gonna charge them to get out of that contract. So if you want in this room to kind of ballpark saying, hey, you have a $300,000 mortgage left, I see you're with Royal, TD, Scotia, CIBC, one of the big 5 banks, you can ballpark pretty darn close saying, I estimate that your payout penalty is gonna be, don't say 4%, but just in your brain, say it's gonna be very close to 4 times 300, $12,000, give or take. If you wanna confirm that, call your bank and say, if I sold my house tomorrow, I had to pay you back early, what are you gonna charge me? It's gonna come very close to that. So you can use that ballpark $12,000 as extra negotiating room to bring the price down. Let's say you go into a pretty house and it doesn't need any fix, clean, and paint on the bathroom. You can use that $12,000 to get it down to the number that you're talking.
Yes, excellent point, thank you.
And you'll be amazed how many sellers believe that their payout penalty is only 3 months interest, and it ain't. It's huge.
I can do one better than that. There's a website called Rate Hub where it lists probably 8 or 12 lenders and will calculate it for you.
Great resource. Will had a question there?
Yeah, so when it comes to paperwork, I've gone to some foreclosure people, and then they bring me that stack of mortgage paper and some other lien that they kind of have in the property. And then you try to determine how much they owe versus how much the property is actually worth. Do you do some sort of paperwork to help people be able to read fast and understand what's the situation is?
Yes, so So great question, when people are in foreclosure, what you want them to get from their bank or lending institution is a mortgage information statement. When people are in foreclosure, once the bank's lawyers get involved, the costs go very quickly. So let's say it's Scotiabank's lawyer, they can request a payout not a payout, well, it's kind of like a payout statement that will show all the legal fees on there. Because that's what we want to determine. Now it's legal fees plus missed payments, and it could be missed tax payments or behind on taxes as well. I mean, property tax payments. So you want to determine how much total is owed, because sometimes it's not worth it to buy a foreclosure because they owe too much. And here's the other thing. In order to get a renewal, so let's say they have 8 months left before their mortgage renews, you need really at least 6 clean months in order to potentially get a renewal, depending on how bad the situation is. So when people don't have very little time left on their mortgage and they're in foreclosure, it doesn't always work to do an agreement for sale. You have to be very careful. So if the lender won't renew, even though you've made up the payments, you're kind of putting yourself in a position where you may have to close with your own financing or close with cash. Because once it goes to an open mortgage, some banks charge a lot of money. It could be 7% on an open mortgage until you get that paid out. So you have to pay attention to when the mortgage renews and how much time there is.
So I'm glad we're talking about this, because I think that foreclosures are the false holy grail of investing. Everybody thinks that if you can get out of foreclosure, obviously you're going to be able to buy a property for not very much money. But the truth of it is that foreclosures often sell for higher than what you would really expect, close to what they're worth or more, because of the misinformation that people have, so people bid more. The second thing is that it's tough to get that information. You're right, Andrea, if you can get it pre-foreclosure before it goes to the lawyers, you have a chance of getting reasonably accurate information. As soon as it goes to the lawyers, then foreclosure lawyers run big, efficient plants where they do nothing but foreclosures. And they get paid usually by the lender on a fixed fee basis. Even though they don't charge you a fixed fee, they get paid by the lender on a fixed fee basis. So they are not interested in answering our questions as investors, or my questions as a lawyer who's acting for a buyer. When I say I need a mortgage information statement with, the tax arrears, your legal fees, what legal fees you might expect to still generate up to the point where this is finished. Oh, there's a property management company involved as well, property management fees. They don't even want to answer that question. And by the time they get an answer to me or to you or to us, guess what? It's out of date and moving up. So foreclosures overall are tough.
Yes, so once the lawyers are involved, not the greatest deals, and they take long to get updated amounts. Good
Question back here about realtor commission, potential objection.
Yeah, so on the second page, when you're negotiating the biggest discount, which is the realtor fee, what level of pushback do you get from the vendor when they say, yeah, but I'm not listing it on the MLS, that's what the realtor would tack on top of the house's worth?
Okay, so most of the time people are not gonna object too much, because even if the realtor, even if the value's worth 300 and they tack it on to 315, in this market, it's not moving anyhow. So let's get realistic. And so you say to people, well, go ahead, put it on the market. Is the realtor gonna pay for your empty house, all your mortgage taxes and insurance and all the utilities? What's that gonna cost you? Over $2,000 a month. So is the realtor gonna pay your house $2,000 a month until he sells it? Probably not. I can take over in 2 weeks. How does that work for you?